Welcome to Overcome Yourself, the podcast, where we rewrite stories, shift mindsets, and make dreams come true. I'm your host, Nicole Tuxbury. Let's get into today's episode. Hello there, everyone, and welcome back to the next episode of Overcome Yourself, the podcast. As you know, my name is Nicole, and I'm so excited to be here today with Susan. And she specializes in healing after trauma. But before I butcher what you do, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to you, Susan. Please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and who you help.
Sure, absolutely. My name is Susan Snow. I am a trauma resiliency coach, which means that for some people that have already gone through some kind of trauma therapy with a therapist, a professional, and they're still feeling kind of stuck because they're a different person now, um, that's where I come into play. I help you create a map moving forward and help you to kind of redefine and change mindset a little bit. Because even though we're healing from trauma, we still have some self-doubt and some self-talk that is not exactly positive all the time. So that's where I kind of come into play. I'm also a speaker. I've spoken on stages and many podcasts. Um, and I am an author of a book called The Other Side of the Gun: My Journey from Trauma to Resiliency. That book actually was born out of a trauma that I experienced at 17. My dad was an LAPD detective, and he was investigating. He was the lead investigator on a case, and on October 31st, 1985, I was 17. I had a 6-year-old brother at the time, and that Halloween, he went to go testify. The men that he was testifying against um, planned out his death. So that night, I was home trying to get ready for a party that I was going to schmooze my parents to go to. And the plan was dad was going to pick up my brother from school and come home, and then the schmoozing would entail. um, I didn't get that chance. As I was getting ready, the phone rang, and my mom was home. I ran to the phone and picked up the phone, and it was a lady from my brother's school. And all she said was that there was a drive-by shooting and my dad was involved. At that point, my mom walked into the room and I handed her the phone really quickly and tried to listen in to the conversation, but all I had to do was watch her body language and I knew it was bad. She got off the phone and came to me and said, "We're going to the school." So we went to the school, we drove there. It was evening time. By the time we got there, it was after 5 o'clock. So it was dark. And my mom parked in the middle parking lot, and we headed to the back of the school, which is where the kids got out after school care. As we got there, it was like daylight because there were so many police cars and the lights were lighting up the sky. There was an ambulance that sat in the street, and my mom and I caught an eye of my dad's truck. So we started to run towards the truck. As we got closer, we saw glass on the ground and rounded the corner, and there he was, partially covered up. At that point, I watched my mom drop to her knees and start screaming. And I stood in the street totally frozen, not being able to comprehend what I was looking at. So what I ended up doing is hyper focusing on that ambulance. And my head kept saying, "Why isn't anybody helping him?" Some police officers pretty quickly came over to us and escorted us back into the school, into an office where I sat down and they took my mom aside. As I was sitting there just trying to comprehend everything that was going on, and there was a lot of chaos that night, I could overhear two ladies talking in the office that they worked there. And the one lady said to the other that my dad was deceased. And in that moment, that's where my world crashed. I My instinct was I wanted to get up off of that chair and run out of that room and run as far as I could from the situation. But
Mhm.
my body felt like it was made of cement and I couldn't move. Um, I just sat there trying to navigate all of these different emotions that were happening all at once when my mom came up to me and she said, "I'm sending you with a neighbor." And I know that at that very moment that I wanted to run out of that room, but I was also a 17-year-old kid that needed to be with her family. And unfortunately, I didn't get that chance. I went to the neighbor's house, and the poor neighbor was, I mean, she had known our family for many years, and she was trying to comprehend everything that was going on in her, with as an adult. And here she has his daughter just completely inconsolable. I was dating a guy at that time who was 19, and we'd only been dating 3 months. And I just begged for him. I just wanted her to call him. And she did. She called him at work, and he showed up. He showed up and he was ready to go. Like he didn't understand. She did not give him a lot of information. So when he rolled up, he said, "Grab your purse, let's go. What hospital is he at? Where's your mom? Where's your brother?" And I couldn't spit out the words. I couldn't do it. And it wasn't until he was getting a little more persistent as to leave, I blurted it out. "He's gone." And he said, "What do you mean he's gone?" And I said, "He's not at a hospital. He's gone." And I watched him drop to his knees and start sobbing. So both of us were just trying to comprehend everything that was going on. Um, my neighborhood was filled with police officers. The media had ascended because this was a big story at the time. And I, as I went home, I didn't recognize anyone that was in my house.
Wow.
I had total strangers in my house. And being a kid that I was, I didn't want to deal with anyone. So I ran straight to my room and hid. It was the only thing that I could do at that moment.
Mhm.
See, back then in the mid 80s, there wasn't talk about mental health, and there were no resources for kids, especially with LAPD at the time. They had systems in place to support the widows and the widowers, but not a whole lot for the kids. And so, as I was there in my room, I just my boyfriend left, and as he left, I could hear people talking to him, and I just stayed where I was, um, in total shock, not knowing how to navigate that emotion, um, and I I didn't even wake up. I didn't go to sleep that night. I just looked out my window and saw that it was sunlight. I had heard my brother overnight, so crying. And I knew that he was okay physically. My dad had saved his life that night. And so I didn't get to see him until the morning. It was about 11 a.m., I think. And I was able to hug him and tell him I loved him and tell him that we were going to get through this. Um, It was a very difficult, crazy time because it took them 6 days to find the men involved.
Wow.
And unbeknownst to us, we were targets as well.
Mm.
So that police presence stayed in my yard, both backyard and front yard for 6 days. I had bodyguards. So I went from having this normal teenage life to this. Um, and I didn't know how to, I didn't know what was happening to me. I lived in a fog. I wasn't sleeping. I had deep depression. Because my dad was also my safe space, I had a lot of anxiety, um, and a lot of panic attacks. But again, I didn't understand what was going on. To me, it felt like I was going crazy and I was out of control. And it wasn't for about a month after everything kind of died down that LAPD said to my mom that they were going to pay for some therapy for all three of us. So at the time, I thought, being a kid at that time, I thought, well, if you go to a therapist, you must be nuts. I mean, that was just the mindset.
Mm-hmm.
But I was also in a mindset of like living in this fog, and if you pushed me in a certain direction, I just went that direction. I had no advocacy for myself. I was afraid to verbalize what was going on because I thought they would throw me in a loony bin and not come back. Um, so I did. When my mom voluntold me that I was going to therapy, that's what I did. And I, in hindsight, this man that I saw, he did not want to dip his toes in the weeds at all. I don't think in hindsight he was trauma competent nor informed. And so I think he was almost afraid to ask certain questions that would open that up. So and again, I didn't know how to verbalize it myself. So when I went to see him, our sessions were very shallow. They were very general. And we basically only talked about my relationship with my mom, my boyfriend, my relationship with my brother, and school. That's it. And every week I saw this man for an entire year. I kept thinking, today's the day. Today's going to help me feel better. And every day I walked out of there not feeling any better. After a year, he looked at me and said, Susan, you're a well rounded young lady. You're going to be fine for the rest of your life, and I don't need to see you anymore. I literally walked out of his office thinking, okay, that's it. I've snapped. I've cracked. I'm crazy. This is something I'm just going to have to deal with myself.
Mm-hmm.
And, even my mom at the time, she had kind of turtled in. Um, a lot of the focus was on my brother and my mother, and so be it. I understand why, but I also got pushed aside.
Mm-hmm.
And from the night of being sent away to that time, I felt like I was not important in the scenario. So I created this emotional mask based on what people would say to me, which was, oh, Susan, you're so brave. Oh, Susan, you're so strong. And so I thought, okay, without anyone seeing the turmoil that's going on inside of me, I'm just going to put that facade out. That's going to be my mask that I'm going to hide behind. And I did. I did that for 14 years of my life. I lived in fight, flight, or freeze. When people came to me trying to support me, I pushed them away. I said, this is my burden. This is not yours. I can handle this. I'm fine. I hate that word. I'm fine. Um, and I lived like that. In hindsight, that kept me from really seeing things for what they really are. I was a total people pleaser. I molded myself to be what people needed instead of who I truly was. And that was because I was unhealed and undiagnosed, and didn't know how to, um, I didn't know really how to be myself because I didn't know who that was.
Mm-hmm.
And um, I married that boyfriend. We're still together almost 40 years, which is crazy to say. Um, And we had two kids, and we decided to relocate to Colorado from Southern California. And at that point, I was ready to kind of put that part of my life aside. It needed to stay in California, which, haha, funny thing for me, right? Um, and so when we moved to Colorado, I didn't tell anyone who I was, what my story was, nothing. And I was working as a hairdresser. I worked at a salon that was very close to Littleton, Colorado. And I was working on April 20th of 1999. I put a client under the dryer and walked into the back to take a break, turned on the TV, and up popped the Columbine shootings in real life. Like, I had a visceral reaction. I started having flashbacks. I saw the school, the lights, the firemen, the all the things. But remember, I was told I was gonna be fine for the rest of my life. So everything that was happening to me in that very moment, I had no idea what was happening. I felt like I was spiraling. I was going into a panic attack, and I knew I was. Turned white as a ghost, and my colleague came over to me and she was totally confused. And she's just like, I don't understand what's going on with you. What's happening? You're too young to have kids at that school, and I know you don't live around there. So what is happening to you? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know. I can't answer that question. And so when she left the room, I did what I always do. I put that mask back on. I went out, I finished my day. Everyone around me was an emotional mess, angry, crying, I mean, you name it. And I was completely stoic and kept telling myself, this isn't affecting me. It's not affecting me. I'm going to be fine tomorrow. It's going to be fine. And the joke was on me because the minute I walked out of that door, all of it came flooding back. And not only did it come flooding back, but it came flooding back even harder than it was in the beginning. And I was struggling to sleep at night again. I knew I was going down that dark hole of depression. Suicidal ideation started to creep in again. And I wanted to leave. I didn't want to feel this way anymore, but at the same time, I had babies. I had young kids, and I was like, it was like a constant fight every day. And my husband, being the very smart man that he is, recognized it, and he knew that it was a slippery slope. So he met me at the door one day and he said, Susan, you have two choices. You either get help or I'm putting you in a hospital. And at that point, I was so scared and felt totally like out of control that I put up that white flag and I was like, all right, I give up. Like, I'll go to the doctor. And I went to a physician and he put me on antidepressants because that's what they do. And then he handed me a business card and he said, I want you to make an appointment with this therapist. And I literally laughed at this man. I was like, wait a minute, I tried that before. It didn't work. 14 years ago, it did not work. What makes you think it's going to happen this time? And he looked at me and he said, you have no choice. And I said, all right, and I made an appointment with this woman, and she specialized in trauma, in extreme trauma, actually. And when I sat there in the first 3 minutes of this session, I knew that something was different. I felt like she was a safe space. I felt like I could be vulnerable with this woman and tell her everything I went through at 17 and what I was currently dealing with. And she was listening to me intently and asking me the questions that The other guy should have asked me years ago. And that's where I knew that she knew that I knew that I could trust her and I felt safe. And she looked at me and she said, Susan, everything you've gone through since you were 17 is normal because you have PTSD. And I kind of sat back and I looked at her and I was like, wait a minute, I'm not in the military. I didn't go to war. What are you talking about? And she said, well, she said, anyone who goes through any kind of trauma can experience PTSD. But what you need to understand is that PTSD is not something that just goes away. It's something you learn to manage. And in that very moment, I had hope. I knew I wasn't crazy. I felt validated. I felt like I had answers to all the questions I had had for so many years about what was happening to me. And I knew that this was my person. This was the adult that I had wanted years ago to help me and navigate me and guide me in my healing. And I finally knew I could heal from this, which was something I never thought possible. So in that moment, I had so much hope. And that started my journey right there.
That is such an amazing story, Susan. Um, that's a huge trauma.
Yeah,
That's very, very big. It was very public. I'm sorry that you went through that.
thank you.
Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that with us.
Absolutely.
Um, because I know it's got to be hard to talk about. Well, I'm sure you've also done a lot of healing, like you've exactly the
Yes.
point of your story, right? So
Yeah.
that you can come back to it, you can talk about it, you can share it, you can inspire others who have been through these really big traumas to say, hey, there's hope, there is a way to move forward. But I want you to talk to me now about the people out there, maybe even like me, right? Who I went through a lot of smaller traumatic incidents.
Mm-hmm.
I lost my mom when I was 1.5, don't really remember, but the effects of that follow you,
Mm-hmm.
right? I had a boat accident when I was 9, and then it wasn't until I was like 21 that I was told, hey, you have the back of a disabled elderly woman, you're about to be in a wheelchair, something's got to change. Um, getting reprimanded via belt when
Mm-hmm.
I was a little kid. Other sexual encounters that leave you
Mm-hmm.
traumatized. These are all smaller traumas, but in themselves still trauma. So can
That's what
you
we called stackable trauma. Yeah.
okay, stackable trauma. But
Mhm.
I want you to talk to me about what even is trauma, because if I hear your story and I'm like, well, that didn't happen to me, and so I must not be as traumatized, right? Which comparing is bad, but can you talk to me about how that affects us, even if it's not big? I don't know how else to put it. Like, that's
Yeah.
just so big.
Well, and you made a point, everybody's trauma is different, okay? So because people can have similar traumatic experiences, it's still not the same. It's still not the same. So I really can't quantify really what trauma is because it's very personal to the
Mhm.
individual, right? So I can't look at you and say, "Oh, well, you had a boat accident, but that's not as bad as someone getting shot up." You know what I mean? It's just
Yes. Yeah.
not your experience is very personal to you. Um, PTSD is a little bit different just because it's an actual physiological um, break, I guess,
Yes.
and so
No, like I will go into full-blown panic attacks. I was
yes,
watching a video of a boat and it was these waves were
yes,
huge. And like
Yes.
I went into a full panic attack. I couldn't breathe. I had to
Yes.
put the phone down and be like, "You are safe. You are here." And I had to wait for the room to stop moving. Like, and so yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
I've been through that.
Yeah. But again, it's like, someone really needs to see someone professionally to be diagnosed with
Yes.
PTSD. Um, and so, I mean, I went through so many years not knowing that what was happening to me was a part of PTSD. And also that it is normal when it comes to something that is that traumatic, right? But you said it before, like there are people that are walking around on this earth that because of sexual abuse that happened as a child and it was kind of a normal, it was a to them it was a normal situation because maybe they weren't the only ones that
Hmm.
had that abuse. And maybe, I met a woman who um her mom was a single mom and the boyfriend was molesting this woman from the age of 3 to 7, and her cousins were being sexually abused and her brother was being sexually abused. So in her mind, this is how you showed love. And so she didn't put two and two together that this was actually trauma. And when I met her, she was headed to rehab for the third time and had never told anyone except for me. And I was just so humbled that she chose me to tell her story. But, when I brought it to her attention that this is the reason you drink, when you heal this, sobriety will be easier to attain. A light bulb came on in her head and she had hope. So this is why I wrote my book. This is why I speak on stages. This is why I do podcasts and why I coach, because I feel like even though I went through all of this, my purpose in this is to give people hope
I love that.
that they can heal from whatever it is they've gone through in their lives. And this is my true purpose. Writing the book made me realize my true purpose. And um, and a lot of that purpose came with fear, right? Because when you allow yourself to be that vulnerable, it brings up a lot of fear, right? And what I had to do is I had to learn to bulldoze through it. The only way I could do that is to look at the situations I was fearful about, which was my relationship with my mother. In telling my story, I had to tell hers.
Hmm.
And it's not the story that the public knew.
Right.
um, and I, I, my fear was it going to destroy our relationship or open a conversation? And also with my husband, we have been through so much in our relationship that I was afraid it was going to bring up some wounds for him. And the third was there's two men that were still incarcerated. And having been a target in the past, there's always that sense of danger in the back of your head. And so my fear was, if I put myself out there, is there going to be retaliation? So when I zoomed out and I really thought about it, I asked myself, what is the true purpose behind writing your book? And I thought about all the people, even in the law enforcement world. There was so much anger and pain around my dad's death that I thought if they saw me healing, that it would give them a way to heal as well. And then moving past that, I thought there are people out there that need to have the hope that I had in that one day. And I want to give that to people. I want them to know when they do the work and they heal from this, that they can take their power back from what hurt them or who hurt them, right? So every time those fears started to come up and surface, I just saw those faceless people out there that needed to hear this message. And that's what allowed me to bulldoze through and keep going. So that's what I tell people all the time. When you're in that state of being fearful, zoom out, figure out what it is, what you want your life to look like, because it can look like that. The work is not easy. I don't candy coat it. But when you are able to move through your pain and heal from it, the feeling on the other side of that is priceless, just like that commercial. But it is priceless because you finally can become the person you've always wanted to be. And that pain from that trauma has always held you back.
Yes. I think you brought up a very important point in the story that you shared with us. Um, I use this in terms of, writing content, like, when you make a podcast episode and you
Mm-hmm.
can turn it into a blog, and like your podcast episode is your big domino content, right? So you knock
Mm-hmm.
that out and now all your content is done for a month if you just schedule it out, right? But the way that you put it was, you told her, hey, this is your big domino. Right now, you're treating the symptoms that you're seeing coming out. So, like drinking, the self sabotage, all the things that come from that, those are symptoms. And
Yeah,
you're not going to do anything by treating the symptoms. You've
right.
got to go back. What's causing all of
Yeah,
this? What's the big domino? And then once that big domino is handled, everything else falls into place. Um,
yeah,
yeah, and we are walking, living, breathing testaments, right? Because I know I tried to solve the symptoms, right? And like I said, that doesn't do anything. That's just covering up where it's coming from. Because now you have to deal with that every day or every week, every month, like
right.
that a headache that keeps coming back. You
Yeah,
have a headache every week, every week, every week. Where's it coming from? It's not about taking Tylenol, moving on. How do we get it to stop being a headache, right? And the same works for our emotional stuff as well. I love that. Now, when I
absolutely.
was writing my book, one of my core themes, one of my foundations was discovering the power of practicing gratitude.
Yes.
So, in this healing journey that we're taking from trauma to, you know, going through the mud, because like you said, it's not easy, it's not fun. You're
Mm,
not singing on the top of a hillside with the sun, right? This is like crying your eyes out under the blankets.
right.
um, right. So what part in have you found with your clients that gratitude plays in all of this?
Oh my gosh. So I just had this conversation. That is so funny. So I have adult children, and I'm going to give you an example. So on Friday night, my one of my adult kids had a party here at my house, and I struck up a conversation with a young man.
Mhm.
Um, and I told him what I do for a living. We kind of discussed my story a little bit. And in doing that, I gave him a safe space where he was able to tell me his story as well. And he told me that he's been in therapy for years and years, just trying to heal from some past trauma of his own. But he still felt like he had a son who was on the spectrum. And he said, I feel like I put my stuff on my kid, which is very common when people are still trying to heal from past trauma and things like that. And he says, I don't know. I get in my head, and then I start to, I have negative self-talk that happens, and I said, when does this start happening? And he said, well, sometimes I wake up like this, like I wake up like this. And I have all this guilt about being a bad dad and just, wanting to be a better parent and all of these things. And I said to him, I said, have you ever journaled? Because this was one of the modalities I was introduced to in the very beginning with my second therapist. Um, but that was to get all the stuff out of my head before I went to
Mhm.
bed. However, I told him the other thing that I did is in the morning, I would journal 3 things I was grateful for and why I was grateful for them. And because sometimes when you say something about journaling, people get a little freaked out. I don't know what to think. I don't want to write. I don't know where to start, And so I told him, I said, have you ever journaled? And he said, well, I've done it, but not consistent and everything. And I said, okay. I said, have you had a gratitude journal? And he said, no, never heard of that. And I said, um, here's what I did, and here's what it does. I said, when you get up in the morning, before you put your feet on that floor, you grab your gratitude journal and you write the 3 things you're grateful for and why you're grateful for them. And what you're going to see is that instead of wrapping your head around this concept of I'm a bad person, I'm a bad dad, I'm, you know, whatever, you're going to be able to see the things that are beautiful in your life. And then it will allow you to have some gratitude for yourself. And you could see the light bulb come on. And he was just like, whoa, I never thought about that. And I said, well, that is why I'm a coach. um, And he was like, thank you so much. Can I just give you a hug? I said, sure, absolutely. So, I gotta tell you though, when I walked away from that conversation, I felt like I was walking on cloud nine because it was the universe reminding me that this is my purpose. This is why I'm here, is to remind people that they are beautiful, amazing human beings and that they just need to find love for themselves. And in doing that, you can become what you want to become, the best partner, the best mom and dad, the best whatever, because you have love for yourself, and that's where it starts. And really, even when the world feels like it's on fire, which it kind of is, but you can look at the things around you and in your life and pick them out and say, I am so grateful to have this. And it can be the tiniest of things, right? It could be the blue skies outside, It could be the plant that you didn't kill. That would be me.
Yeah, I tell my clients make a game of finding like the smallest thing to be grateful for, like
Yes,
the atom of oxygen that you get to
right,
breathe, that it's like the perfect
exactly.
concentration of elements, the perfect
Hmm.
ratio that allows us to breathe. Like how small, the little cricket that's like, feeding the
Yeah,
ecosystem, the blade of
exactly.
grass that smells really good after it's cut.
Yep, exactly. So
I
I
love that.
think it's a powerful tool. It's a
Yeah.
powerful thing. Yes.
Love it. Yeah, to shift our perspective, like you said, because when one of the things I found when I started practicing gratitude is like exactly what you said, you appreciate you more. And when you
Mhm.
appreciate you more, when you can see the value in you, well, then going to the doctor becomes a little bit easier. Going
Mhm.
and doing things for yourself, like we were talking about the big domino, right? And doing certain things for yourself, it just becomes easier because it's not, oh, I have to do this today. It's, oh, I'm so grateful that I get to do this really annoying thing
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
love that.
Yep.
Yes. All right. So you had mentioned before we started recording that you had a free gift for the audience. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
So I do a 40-minute free
Nice.
discovery call with anyone who reaches out to me, just to see if we're a good fit. Um, or maybe someone is starting their journey and they have questions, or maybe they need a little bit of encouragement. And they feel like my story or what we've talked about has inspired them. I am open. I am an open ear. And if you want to take me up on that 40 minutes, I absolutely will do that. You can, I have a website. It's susansnowspeaks.com. And you can email me through the website. I'm also on all the socials. I'm on IG and TikTok for as long as TikTok's going to be around. I don't know. Um, but there's ways that you can message me through there as well. And again, if it's just if you're just needing someone to kind of talk to and get a little bit of encouragement and some direction, I'm happy to speak to whoever needs
I
that.
love that. Just like the young man at the party. Like you could just get to sit
Yeah,
down, hang
yeah.
out, have a drink, have a nice
Just a
conversation,
conversation. That's all it
change a
is.
life, no big deal.
Right?
I
Yeah.
love that. All right, so as we're signing off, we like to sign off here with like your biggest, best tip. Like, what is that piece of advice that you give your clients that just like changes their life?
Well, couple of things. One, this is advice I give to anyone, right?
Yes.
Um, so the biggest thing for me is uh the only way that you're truly going to heal from trauma is to find your person. And sometimes it takes a little bit of time. And
Yep.
when I say your person, I mean the professional, the spiritual advisor, whoever it is, needs to be able to understand your type of trauma because you can't lump trauma into one general pot, right?
Mhm.
Everybody's trauma is different and everybody's
Mhm.
modalities for that trauma will be different. And so this is your healing, it is not the doctor's healing. So because it's your healing, you have every right to interview your therapist. um, Make sure that they understand. Make sure you feel like they're a safe place, they're a safe person, and that you're able to be vulnerable. Because if vulnerability doesn't happen, neither does the healing. So you have to be able to feel that. Um, and the second thing I want everyone to know is that they're not alone. You're not one person on an island by yourself. There are people out there and services out there and that are there to support you and to help you in whatever needs you need. And so don't be afraid to utilize those services. And I think the biggest one too is if you feel like you're out of control, like I did, if you feel like it's too much, I ask you to call somebody that you feel safe with. There are, I think it's 988 is a text that you can reach out to somebody that will be able to just be there for you and listen to you. And I think it's very important, especially people that are either unhealed or undiagnosed and feel like they're out of control. Just know
Mhm.
that you aren't alone. And there are people
That's
that care about you out there.
that's beautiful. I love it. And I think that as a coach, I think it's so important to advise, hey, you need a team. It's not just me as your coach.
Yep.
You need a whole team of people helping you out.
Yep.
So yes, hire me as a coach. We're going to work on all the future stuff.
Yep.
But I need a teammate in your therapist who's going to help
Yeah.
you with all the healing underneath that's going to help us to accomplish these things.
Yeah.
And so you're not alone. You've got lots of resources here available. I love that so much. Thank you for sharing that, Susan. That was awesome.
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay. So this has been an amazing episode. Like I said, thank you so much for your vulnerability and for sharing your story with us. Um,
Thanks for having me.
yes, of course. And we will catch you guys on the next episode of Overcome Yourself, the podcast. See you next time. Bye. Thanks again for tuning in to Overcome Yourself, the podcast. Stay bold, stay grateful, and keep becoming your best you. For more information and resources from me, Nicole, head over to nicoletexberry.com/resources. See you next time.